Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lena, and this is Shervin. We're both regulated immigration consultants, and we work here at AIMI Canada. So the objective today is to walk you through Express Entry, right?
Correct.
So what is Express Entry?
Well, it is an intake system for the different Canadian immigration programs. There is 4 different programs that fall under this. There is a federal skilled trade, federal skilled worker, Canadian experience class, and to a portion, the provincial nominee programs.
Exactly. So it is very important for you to know that prior in creating your profile in Express Entry and calculating your points, you have to pre-qualify in one of the streams, right? So as Shervin said, federal skilled worker, Canadian experience class, federal skilled trade, there are 3 of them. Most important portion is also to identify if you do add up enough points for the federal skilled worker, right? The 67 points that is required.
Correct.
Okay, I think we could go over actually the 6 factors that are age, your education credential, your work experience, English proficiency, work in Canada, if you have a valid job offer, and in addition to that, if you can get additional points for having family in Canada or studying in Canada and other factors.
Correct.
Right?
So that's probably for one of the most popular programs for people who have never been to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
For overseas candidates who are in skilled works, who have at least 1 year of work experience continuously in a skill category in the last 10 years. That is one of the main requirements. And in addition to that, you also have to be able to prove sufficient funds for yourself and your family to be able to satisfy the Canadian government that you can maintain yourself for at least 1 year while you're in Canada. That's the first step, basically. So you need to obtain the 67 points based on the 6 factors. You need to be able to have sufficient funds for yourself and your family, and you should have at least a minimum 1 year experience in a skill category continuously. So the Canadian system doesn't necessarily go with the job titles, but looks at the job duties that you have performed. And that would be something that once you actually enter the program, we would actually analyze it to see if the job that you have performed in country is actually a skilled job here in Canada.
Exactly. I think you have heard that is under the NOC or 0 or A or B. So you will have to look into details of your job duties in order to qualify under one of them, right?
Correct.
In addition to that, something that is very important, a minimum is going to be CLB 7 on your IELTS general training or on your CELBIP in order to qualify.
That is correct.
Right?
So
anything that you score below CLB 7, unfortunately, you won't be able to proceed with your application.
So for CLB 7, when you're doing the IELTS general exam, it means 4 6s, okay? But that's the first challenge. So let's say you get the 67 points. Is that going to be sufficient enough for you to be able to actually apply for permanent residency? Challenge, and that's when the Express Entry system comes in. So again, based on certain criteria, you're given a ranking in the system in order to be able to say whether you are a qualified candidate to be able to apply for permanent residency.
Exactly. One other detail is that Express Entry was introduced in 2015. So since 2015 up to 2018, over 149,000 people, they have immigrated through the system.
Correct.
Right? Prior to that, it was only based on point system. It's very different from what we have now.
Correct, and
right?
It was based on, actually, previously it was based on occupations.
Yeah.
Yes, but right now we don't have that. So if you have skilled experience, you have the 67 points, you meet the minimum criteria, you could put yourself technically in the pool. But are you going to get selected? That's the other challenge.
Exactly.
And that's when it's going to become a little bit tricky in order to be able to have enough points to actually be pulled from the pool to apply for permanent residency.
Yes, there are many people that during my consultations, right, what they tell me is I have graduated, for example, bachelor in laws, right, or I'm a doctor. I might not qualify to immigrate to Canada, which is not true at all, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't matter, actually. The only thing is you need to be under a high skill occupation, right? And in order to qualify the program, if you are applying through the federal skilled worker, make sure that you reach the 67 points. That is going to be your very first step, right? In addition to that, we have also the Canadian experience, which is experience in Canada. It needs to be done in Canada.
Correct. So that one is a little bit different. So that's the second category we're going to talk about, Canadian experience. For that one, you have to have at least 1 year experience in the last 3 years in a higher skilled occupation. The good thing about this one is that it doesn't have to be continuous, so you can combine these ones, the work experience you have in Canada, but it has to be within the last 3 years. If you work in Canada, you don't need to provide proof of funds for yourself and your family. It's basically the 1 year experience. Again, you have to meet minimum language requirements.
Which is lower than the CLB 7, right?
For level Bs, correct. If
Yes.
you're working in higher skills, which is level A management, you have to have CLB 7, correct.
Yeah. But if you're under the NOC then you could be CLB 5,
That
which
is
is way less, right? In addition to that, it is important for you to know that it does not need to be under the same employer and it does not need to be under the same NOC. So you can work, for example, 4 months as a cook and then another 7 months as a painter and then maybe additional month as an assistant. You'll still comply with the 12 months requirement and be able to apply.
Correct. And this program is very popular for people who have either been able through various programs to come to Canada, either through the temporary foreign workers who are already working here, or for students who actually study here and are able to get an open work permit afterwards. So the bulk of the people that get the permanent residency through this program have some sort of work permit that they were able to utilize here in Canada in order to get those points here.
And we have also noticed, right, looking into the latest report issued by immigration, that 49% of the people receiving the permanent residence, they are currently in Canada, which means that they came in, right, as a temporary resident, as a student or as a worker, and then they were able to qualify themselves.
That is correct. And this is one way of the Canadian government to stimulate our economy and maintain the people that they want to keep here. Because if you come here, study, work, they want you to be able to eventually be able to get permanent residency, of course, because you're contributing greatly to the Canadian society.
Exactly. So another program in order to qualify for express entry is through the federal skilled trade.
That is correct. So that one is very specific. It's geared towards people who are in the trades occupation. What do we consider trades here? Obviously, there is a big list, but some examples are plumbers, electricians, carpenters, construction supervisors. So they work in very unique trades which are in shortage here in Canada, actually. So if you have experience in those categories, and the requirement is that you have 2 years experience in the last 5 years. You have to have some language requirements again, which is far lower than what it is for the federal skilled worker. It's at CLB 5. And you also, the main thing here is that you either have to have a Canadian company who is willing to hire you, so a job offer, or you have to have been certified here in Canada. So through one of the trades, each province has their own trades board, so you have to get certification through those and to be able to participate in this program.
If you have been following the draws, you will notice that at least twice a year, there is a specific one just for federal skilled trade where the point system is way lower than the other ones, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't matter if you don't have a bachelor degree, right? As long as you have the skills to go through the federal skilled trade, this might be an option, including cooks and chefs too.
That is correct. And with this one, if you're not working in Canada, if you don't have a valid work permit, you do have to prove settlement funds again. So you have to be able to convince the Canadian government that you have enough money to be able to support yourself for 1 year.
Perfect. Sherry, I think that we can actually explain a little bit more about what is a valid job offer to be considered, right, under immigration.
Correct. Most people actually think a valid job offer is if you get a letter from an employer or a contract, which is actually correct. That is valid job offer. However, for the Canadian government, for immigration purposes, to consider that, the company has to actually be validated by the Canadian government. What do we mean by validation? They have to take certain steps in order to hire a foreign national. This process is called a labor market impact assessment, LMIA. If the company, and this process entirely based on the company, has rather little to do with the candidate, it verifies whether there is a shortage in the Canadian labor market, if the hiring of the foreign national is going to affect the Canadian labor market negatively. And if the company that is doing the labor market is financially capable to pay the foreign national, and only if you get a labor market approved, can this be considered a valid job offer for immigration purposes.
Exactly. Prior to November 2016, actually, whoever carried a positive LMIA, that would go towards 600 points, right?
Mhm.
Under the express entry. It is no longer 600 points. Right now, it's 50 to the maximum of 200 points, right? And you were to qualify for 200 points only if you are under the NOC 00, which is kind of not that easy.
Correct.
To get the job offer,
yes,
right?
Correct. Well, it is still, but it is
Yeah.
for executive, basically CEOs of companies. We have seen those as well,
Yes.
but rather,
Not that much.
Yes, they are correct. There are rather rare job offers because, most company CEOs, the salaries are quite high. So you could probably potentially find quite a few Canadians who could.
Yeah. So right now for the LMIA application, it is taking around 12 to 16 weeks for approval.
Depending on the cat, yes, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I think I tell most of my clients about 3 months.
Okay, so based in your own experience, someone that works in categories under NOC C or D, for example, dishwashers or servers or construction laborers, what are the chances in getting LMIA?
Right now, it is based on actually the market, like the job market and the province. Now, if you were to do this in the province of Alberta, probably not that high. In BC, we are seeing approvals still in the construction industry, even construction workers. We are seeing approvals in the hospitality industry. The hospitality industry in the Vancouver area has been always in shortage. It's actually not only, it's actually all over BC. And there is some, we have seen some success in those categories.
Okay, perfect. So now that you have qualified yourself under one of these 3 streams, you're able to go into your profile for your express entry, right? Which means that it starts a new game plan. The point system is totally different from the 67 points. We will start from scratch now. That is age. In order for you to maximize your points for age, you should be under 30. Right?
Correct.
Yes. The higher your level of education, the better you're going to, awards points towards that. English proficiency, French is also very important, right? As a second language. Your work experience in Canada or outside Canada, everything counts towards that.
Correct. So the way this system works, I guess there is some bonus points that you could always achieve as well. Right now, for people from overseas, what I tend to advise is if you are between age 18 to 32, have a master's degree, have at least 3 years work experience, and a CLB level 9, correct?
Yes.
That's probably where you can really maximize your points and probably have a good chance of getting selected, actually.
Yes, CLB 9 would be on your IELTS general training listening 8 and 7 and the rest. And if you're doing on self, that would be 9 for all 4 of them.
Correct. So that would be the minimum. Obviously, if you have a combination of other things that could help, if you have brothers and sisters in Canada who are citizens or permanent residents and over 18, give you additional points.
And they need to be living in Canada.
Correct. If you have actually French language abilities to a certain level, you could actually gain additional points.
It would be on B2 and it would be 42 points.
So yes, so those are things that can actually bump up your numbers as well to be able to be at a Canada. Obviously, when you do a combination of things where you have actually Canadian education and Canadian work experience, all of a sudden you see the system giving a lot of additional points to be able to a point where people end up, people always ask me, who are these people that are 470 or 500 points? But exactly, those are those people that have either worked or studied in Canada and are able to get these kind of levels.
Exactly. If you have studied in Canada, if you have decided to go on, for example, a public institution and you complete a certificate, a diploma of 1 to 2 years, it is awarded additional 15 points. If you have completed a diploma of 3 years or more, or a bachelor degree or a master degree, it will be awarded 30 points. It is also very important to remember that if you have chosen to study at a private institution, it needs to be a degree in order to get additional points.
That is correct. So addition, like I said, we talked already about the brothers and sisters, the 15 points.
French speaking, right?
French speaking, yes. So those are the ways that you can, obviously there is very limited things you can do with your age, but in order to be able to qualify, everybody has their own individual circumstances. So it is best to talk to a professional, to us, to learn, to guide you to see how you can improve your points. There are times that we can make suggestions to make sure that you are going to be able to get where you want. But it is really right now the way the system works. For people from overseas, those are the minimum requirements we are looking for to make sure that they have the best chance in order to be able to.
Yes, what about the PMPs? It will bring you additional 600 points, right? That's a lot of points.
Correct. So the PMPs, obviously each province has their own criteria. So they are done through the provinces. They're administered through the provinces. The bulk that we see right now is what? British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and some of the eastern provinces. I haven't seen anything from Alberta because it's become very difficult right now.
Well, actually, we have received a couple of invitations because if you have, if you score at least 300 points, you could be able to get an invitation from them. The only tricky part is that you have to prove that you have strong connections to that province.
Correct.
And it is not that easy, right?
Yes, correct. Unless you work there, actually.
Yeah, or have studied there or family there, right?
So the popular ones, obviously, especially for people who are overseas, the popular ones where you don't actually need a job offer, most of the provincial nominees are based on job offers, that you actually work in Canada and you have the support of the company, actually, that you get. There is always exemptions, but the ones that are from overseas right now that are based, that allow people without a job offer to come in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Nova Scotia currently, because some of the way the one for Saskatchewan works, they have an in-demand list, demand list of jobs.
The latest update was May 1st, so you have to go into their website, actually through the province, and then look if you are under the list of occupations in demand, and you have to also go for 60 points, that's the minimum for that province, in order to apply. It could be either paper-based, that is not linked to Express Entry, or it could be through Express Entry too.
Correct. So the trick is here, then all of a sudden you have to qualify for two different programs.
Yes.
The provincial one as well as the Express Entry one. So in addition to qualify for the federal skilled worker, you also have to obviously qualify for the specific requirements of the province. So which, in this case, like let's say for Saskatchewan, you have the 60 points, you have to be on the jobs that are in demand, so that's the ones. For Manitoba, the way it is, you have to have strong connections, friends and family. There is also, they have an in-demand list as well. So that one, again, it really relies more on the ties to the province.
I think most of the province, what they want is that for people to really settle, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they need.
Correct. So if you have family members in those provinces, those are all points that are going to be able to help you in order to get. So the way this program works, you are in the, let's say, just to give you a breakdown, you are in the Express Entry. Let's say you qualify for the Saskatchewan one. You make a separate application to Saskatchewan. If you're approved, Saskatchewan will award you 600 points. So if you had 300 points previously in the profile, they add you 600 points, you're going to be at 900 points, which is going to guarantee you to get selected.
Yeah, if you're interested in applying through Saskatchewan, we have the license to represent you because you need actually a specific license for that province.
Correct.
Right?
So do you want to expand a little bit on the Ontario one?
Yes, I think we can do that.
Program.
Exactly. Through Ontario, the same thing. You need to have a profile in Express Entry, and you can receive an invitation through them. Of course, it's not because you do qualify through their program that you're going to get an invitation, right? It's discretion of whoever is submitting those applications.
Correct.
Right.
But they have different programs.
They have, yes. So they have one that is through the French speaking. They have the job offer ones, and they have other ones that is only based on point system, right?
Correct.
Which the latest one, it would be candidates over 435 points. Back in 2016, if I'm not wrong, it was over 400 points. So, from time to time, actually, the province, they do change their programs and criteria.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we can look into some of the questions and go from there.
Sure.
So, what about people over the age of 40? What are their chances through express entry or immigrate to Canada at this point?
Well, there's always ways around things. People over 40, it really depends on the circumstances of the candidate. Yes, you might lose some points because of age. But some people that are in their 40s, maybe they might have higher education, they might have family members here, they might have various factors. They might be able bilingual to be able to, it doesn't disqualify you necessarily because
Exactly.
you're 40. It really depends on your specific circumstances. There's always, like I said, in a lot of times when there is not sufficient points, people can always consider the study option route or the job offer route.
Exactly. Another question is, if a person comes to Canada to study permanently in certified of 6 months, how does it help into their immigration application?
So if a person comes, I didn't get that.
Yeah, if they come in and they study for 6 months, certificate for permanent.
Okay, but that's not going to really help actually, because any course that's below 6 months, first of all, you don't need a study permit, and you're not able to get the post-graduation work permit afterwards. The key to studying in Canada is to ensure that you actually get a post-graduation work permit to be able to legally enter the workforce. Now, if you study or if you can challenge the plumbing license here in Canada through the specific trades boards, then that could actually help you to get additional 50 points and also qualify for the federal skilled trade if you meet the rest of the requirements.
Exactly, and this is something that we are able to help you. So if you wish to book a consultation, we can go over all the steps, right, and look into your profile to see what are your chances through the express entry directly without being in Canada, or if it is better for you to come in Canada, maybe to study while your spouse works, and then through the provisional program. So there are many different ways in order to immigrate to Canada.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, another question would be, what about the proof of funds? How do we prove that? Can we receive a donation and use that as a proof?
Well, yes, you can, but it depends the donation where it comes from. Okay. Obviously, anything. Usually what the government looks for is at least 6 months of bank statements to make sure that the money doesn't come from, obviously from sources that are not legitimate or
borrowed.
Exactly, or borrowed, because it has to be your funds. But for every situation, there can be an explanation. I had a client who sold her house before immigrating, and then there was a large sum that went into her account. Now, in that scenario, immigration did ask specifically, what is it, where does this money come from? So we were able to prove the sales agreement to show that the money was coming from legitimate sources. So, but usually what they look at is bank statements and how the money was accumulated or where the source of funds are from.
Exactly. Other thing is it possible to get an invitation from Alberta even though I do not have any ties there? Well, yes, it is possible to get an invitation because all they look into is your score, right? So if you have above 300 points, you are able to get an invitation. Getting an invitation doesn't mean that the province will allow you, right, to get the nomination. It only means that they have sent you an invitation. You have to look into all the requirements, and each province, they have different criteria, and make sure that you do qualify.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So there are also people asking for our contact information. So please email us at contact@immi-canada.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yes. So what else it is important for people that wants to immigrate to Canada to know? What is the first step?
The first step. Well,
book a consultation. That would
yes,
be first.
Correct. A lot of times, the first steps is yes, book a consultation so we can. What I find a lot of times is clients that have randomly done things and they don't exactly know where. What is important for us to do a proper, especially from overseas candidates, your language requirement, your language levels, your education, your work experience. So those are the things that we want to know about right away from the get-go. I get a lot of times people calling me, well, my English is perfect. Okay, great. That's
Get a test.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to, if you want, the government doesn't necessarily look at what we think. They look at test results. So if you are serious, you should book an IELTS test, do an IELTS exam to see. If you come to me and say, well, I have received in my IELTS CLB 9, I have a master's degree, this is my age, then I have a much better idea about what the next steps are for you, how you're going to do, how you're going to improve your points. Even if you have lower scores, then we can tell you, okay, this is where you need to improve, this is how you can improve it, maybe consider the study option. So it really, like, where do you start is, getting yourself prepared through the English exam, through your education. You do have to go through multiple steps, even for education, it has to be evaluated before the Canadian government considers
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And the other thing is, it is going to be mandatory if you qualify through the Federal Skilled Worker Program in order to create your profile to Express Entry, that you also do your essay report.
Yes.
Right, that is one step that is very important that it needs to be done. So in order to create your profile, at first you're just inputting some of your information to the system. So what they need is, of course, your IELTS or your CELPIP result. They need your essay result, your age, and things like that. Right, you're going to input at first only your work experience, in which occupation. It's going to be your primary NOC, and then go from there. Once you receive the invitation, you have 60 days to proceed with the rest of the documents and then actually apply for your permanent residency by then.
Correct.
Processing time is within 6 months.
In most cases.
In most cases, right?
80% of
Exactly. We have had clients that they received their permanent residence in 2 weeks, and
Yes.
others 12 months, right? So it depends.
It seems like lately we have had some delays, but it seems like it's picking up again.
It is.
So,
It is. Everything at immigration right now, it's kind of delayed.
Correct.
Right? That's the reality. Okay, so questions is, how can we improve score? It depends on your profile. So which means that maybe English proficiency, maybe adding French, a job offer, or even coming to Canada to study, right? There are options for you to improve your score. And the other thing is, Express Entry is not the only immigration program, right? There are other options, so you can still qualify yourself under a provisional nominee programs.
Oh yes, with job offers, there is multiple things. There is things for investors. There is for people, for self-employed who are working cultural aspects. Those are all Canada is currently pretty open to immigration, so they have come up with various programs that can be used in order to obtain.
And if we're going to compare actually immigrating to Canada to programs in the US or Australia, I do believe that we have the most flexible one.
Correct.
Don't you agree?
Correctly, yes, we do.
Right?
Because those countries have become extremely difficult.
Exactly. And Express Entry, it has been established in 2015, and we're sort of not many changes, right? It is pretty stable.
It has been, and it is going to be a system that is going to continue, just for the simple fact that the government controls it. They are the ones that are in charge about how many people they want to process, how many people they want to pick, and that obviously benefits them hugely about how they want to manage the system.
Yeah, so, and even though the score is pretty high right now, our last draw was 460 points, right, with 3,600 invitations. Express Entry is still bringing much more immigrants than the programs prior to 2015.
Correct. But the point system, it goes up and down. We have had as low as 412 at times.
13.
Was that? Oh, sorry. Yeah. 413. It's been that long that I forget. I'm getting older. So we have had as low as that, and we have had currently with the ones that are high. But that, again, it fluctuates. There is various factors that the government takes into consideration about other programs that they need to process. Time of the year, usually in August, in summertime, we always saw the numbers to be higher because they don't have enough staff usually on hand because everybody's on vacation. We have an election coming up this year. So
what do you think about the election coming up?
Well, we'll see. I just heard the Liberals are not doing too well. This was actually something handed a poll done this morning. So it looks like we're going to get another Conservative government.
Okay, we'll see what happens. So can paid internships serve as a work experience?
Yes, it can.
As long as it has been actually under the NOC 0A or B, it has been actually paid, right? It needs to be paid, and at least 30 hours per week to be full-time, or part-time equivalent full-time, so it doesn't matter,
Correct. So
right? So yes.
one thing to mention for all these programs, full-time, when we're talking about full-time, it's actually not 40 hours, it's 30 hours. That's the minimum standard for the government.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Question here is, if you have been to Canada before and then high school language exchange program, do you get any points for that?
Unfortunately, for high school, the points are so low that it's not going to make any difference.
Exactly.
And you are not going to get the additional points that you would get for college education. So if you remember, if you have 2 years, 1 or 2 years, you get 15 points. Masters or bachelors, you get 30 points. But for high school, you don't get those points.
Perfect. So another question is, I'm a physiotherapist and PhD student in medicine and health. What is the best immigration program for me?
All right.
Depends.
Depends, correct. I think you need to contact us to have obviously, you meet the educational requirements.
Well, she's still studying PhD, right? But at least we know for a fact that you have probably a master's degree,
Correct.
which is high education already, right? Depending on your age, English proficiency, and how many years of experience you can prove, you might be a great candidate actually for express entry.
Correct.
As of now, right? Okay, so what if my current employer decides to help me? How great am I doing in the process?
Well, okay. Again,
We have to define what kind of help your employer is willing
Correct.
to give you, right?
So again, it depends what status you have. If you're here as with an open work permit or like as a student, so again, that needs a little bit more definition. Your employer, if you're depending on the province you are, they can help you through the provincial nominee program potentially. Sometimes it might be just sufficient enough to do maybe a labor market for you to boost up your points for the permanent residency. So depending on your situation, if they're willing to help, if they have the option of the labor market potentially or the provincial nominee program.
Yeah, one thing that we forgot to mention that is very important is express entry is for everyone that has no intention in living in Quebec.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Quebec goes through a different system, so there's nothing related to express entry itself.
Correct.
Right? Okay, so how do you prove your work experience?
Usually through a letter that is issued by your company. But every country has specific requirements that relate to work, the labor force in those countries. We usually, like I said, depending on the scenario, we always provide the job letter, but it is recommended that you can provide pay stubs from your employers. If, let's say, in certain countries, there's actually companies have to pay insurance on your behalf. So there is records of those insurance payments. So insurance payments, some countries have work booklets which indicate how long you worked, and you have to always have those updated. So depending on what program, what country you are, the more proof, the better.
Exactly.
Obviously. But again, job letters and a combination of other factors, job contracts, pay stubs, anything that could be related to your country that could prove additional work.
Yeah. What we recommend is that your letter includes, of course, your name, right, on the period of time where you work, your wages, number of hours, and the most important part is the description of your duties that you perform, right? Those are the most important things on your job letter. Okay, so once you get your immigration approval and move to Canada, do you have to stay there for a specific time, or you can travel abroad if you need to?
Well, as soon as you get the permanent resident card, which takes about a month, I believe. Yeah,
they're doing faster on that.
Yeah, so you are able to travel. There is a residency requirement which looks at always the last 5 years. So you have to be in Canada 2 years out of 5 years in order to be able to maintain your residency or your PR status. If not, you can lose your PR. Good thing about Canada right now is after 3 years in the last 5 years, if you have 3 years in 5 years, you can actually apply for your citizenship to get a Canadian passport.
Perfect. So the most common nominee programs, are they from BC and Ontario?
No, not necessarily. They're from each province has their own. So they are the most popular ones because everybody either wants to live in Toronto or Vancouver. So those are the hotbeds. But every province, they have their own province, and some provinces are actually, like, let's say the eastern provinces, they have much easier programs right now, where it makes a lot of times sense, like living in a place like Halifax. Canada is a very big place. Okay, it takes from Vancouver, how long is the flight to Toronto? 6 hours.
5 hours.
Correct.
Yeah.
So actually to get to Halifax is about 7.5 hours. So the other provinces might be, again, everybody wants to live in the urban centers, and the most popular ones are BC, like Vancouver and Toronto.
Yeah.
But all the other provinces have their own, and they are quite popular as
They
well.
are, and all of them actually wants to attract people who they have the real intention in establishing, in those provinces, right? Okay, so should I take the tough test even if I won't be applying for Quebec?
Yes, you can, because it gives you additional points in the Express Entry.
Exactly. It can give you up to 42 points if you score at least a B2, which is a lot of points, right?
Yes.
42 is a lot. Okay, I have a C1 level according to my KL test. Do I necessarily have to do the IELTS to prove my English? Yes, actually. Immigration will only take into consideration your IELTS general training, okay? The academic is only for academic purposes, so you need to have the general training or the CELPIP test. No other English test will be taken.
Correct.
Okay, so what else? Once I have my PR, I have a job offer from company on Quebec. Can I accept it?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Once you become a permanent resident, then that's a different situation, right?
Correct. We have under the Charter of Rights, there is mobility rules, basically that a Canadian permanent resident, you have the right to move and live anywhere.
Okay, so Sherwin, how would you summarize Express Entry?
I would say very, based on the previous experiences that we had with the other systems, it's a lot more efficient. It's a lot faster. The previous programs, some of them, I had clients who actually, when I started this business, who had been waiting for about 5 to 7 years and they never get anywhere. And a lot of them, actually, the cases get canceled. We haven't had these actually with the Express Entry system. It's efficient, it's good. It's only right for certain people, however. Okay?
Exactly. It's point system, right? So it is awarded in accordance to whatever points you can get based on age, education, work experience, English proficiency, French, and all of that.
Correct. If you're in the range of 200, I would tell you this is not the right system. Even if you're in the 300 ranges right now, I would tell you you're not probably going to get anywhere.
And there's not much to be improved at the point that you can, score way higher than that too.
Correct. If you, like I said, if you're young, you have a master's degree, you're lacking language, and you end up in the 350, 60, 70 ranges, there is maybe room for improvement. If you get your language over to CLB 9, you still might have a very good chance of getting selected. But for some people, it might not be the best, but then that's when you look for other alternatives.
So right now, consider everyone that is getting their ITAs, that is the invitation to apply, what would be their summary then? They are probably young, right? High education, good English proficiency, probably study in Canada, and work in Canada.
That's yes, but some of the ones that are from overseas,
Of course.
yes. So they are usually, like I said, age 18 to 31, 32, masters, PhDs, high language levels. But we have had people who have work experience in Canada that their language levels have been lower as well. So we have had, we have had candidates who were in the 40s and who have who have worked here in Canada, who had education. I think this system, the way it's designed, is going to make you work for it.
Yeah, you have to.
Yes. So they want people to be really serious about Canada and really prove that they want to be here. And I think that's what the attitude is.
Yeah, we have actually recorded a video that is in Portuguese actually with one of our clients. He came to Canada to study when he was 50. Right, and then he studied in Canada, he worked in Canada. We actually applied through the Express Entry and the Provisional Nominee Program through the BCPNP. So he's in Canada right now as a permanent resident, he's 55. So which means that it is still possible. It's not because, your age is advanced, consider, based on point system, that you cannot immigrate to Canada, you don't have a chance to immigrate to Canada.
Yes.
That's very
important. It does get a little bit challenging.
It is, of course. Yes. It is not going to be that straightforward,
correct,
but it's still possible.
Yes. Again, the Canadian government they want you to they want you to work to become the PR. And
Okay.
that's what
One question that it always pops up if you have lived illegally, for example, in another country where you work, can that work experience count as work experience towards the express entry profile?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to be legally obtained work, okay? Unless you're doing a sponsorship, and that doesn't really matter. But for the express entry, it has always to be legally.
Okay, what if you no longer have status in that country, but you are also not using any work experience from that country? Can you still, accept the invitation to apply and immigrate?
Yes, Canadian. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but the Canadian government, as long as you meet the requirements, they're less concerned about what your status. You have a valid passport. We had a refugee claimant who was in the midst of the process in the U.S. who actually applied to come to Canada on the express entry when she got accepted. Now, the challenge became afterwards how to get her passport, but then once the U.S. government, they were more than happy to give her passport back and then send her this one.
Exactly. So many people also ask, is there a specific program if you have child that are born in Canada? Or, for example, I know that Canada, the population is older, right? So they need younger population. If I have kids, does that help with my immigration application?
It's great for the kid, the Canadian right away, but not for you guys. No, a lot of people, come to circumstances, and there is a misconception that the kid is going to help you. Yeah, the kid gets the Canadian. Maybe once the kid 20-25 years later down the road, they can probably sponsor you.
But then there are the likely requirements which the kid will be needing
who
to
knows
make
what's
up.
gonna correct in 25 years. We don't know what's gonna happen, but the only other option it would allow for anything, which is the humanitarian and compassionate, but the approval rate on those are so low.
1%, would you say?
2%.
Okay.
There is very so it has to be very unique circumstances. So if you're coming in hope to give birth here, so that you're hoping that you get your PR for yourself, unless it's a very unique situation.
Exactly. And having kids actually doesn't help you get more points, okay? Yes. So no, actually through the Quebec program, it used to, I'm not even sure if the new ARIMA program, it will bring you points or not by having kids. I don't remember that.
Yes, I have, the Quebec program is going through significant changes right now with the new government, so I'm just waiting until it's finalized before I can even fully look into it. There's every day something new with them, so I don't know what's going to happen to that.
Okay, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm planning to move through the express entry with my family. Is there any problem since my husband doesn't speak English and I have a newborn baby?
Not really. If your husband has English or has education, it could give you additional points. Okay.
If not, then he is taking points from you.
Correct. So that is one thing. So like sometimes when there is a couple and they allow the secondary applicant to add points, but it takes away points. The baby, not really. The only thing that you have to consider is that you have to actually you have to be able to show settlement funds for 3 people.
Exactly. Okay. So which IELTS test should I take? You have to take the general training. Okay, that's the most important one. Actually, that's the one of the ones that they accept besides CELPIP. And make sure that if you're qualifying yourself through the Federal Skilled Worker, CLB 7 needs to be the minimum.
Right.
Which means that besides getting CLB 7, doesn't mean that they have reached the 67 points, right? That's something that needs to be taken into consideration too.
Yes. So. And then usually with CLB 7, it is going to be extremely difficult to get sufficient points in the express entry.
Yeah, it will be enough for you to move on and create your profile, but that doesn't mean that you're going to score enough.
Correct.
Right? Okay, so what about applications for people that are single and married? Many people, they ask me during our consultation, is it better to get married? It seems like that we can get more points if we're married.
Well, it really depends on like I said, with a secondary applicant. Yes, it can help you improve your points, but it can also actually lower your points if you are married. Now, the Canadian government, they actually opened the option for married couples that if you don't get sufficient points, you can exclude one of the couples, one of the other people, and basically you come you still declare that you're married, of course, but the principal applicant would get permanent residency, and then later on up to sponsor the other person.
Okay.
So it does create two different processes. Is it recommended? In some cases, it might be actually.
Yeah, I have actually have many clients that, like that they want to make sure that both of them will be able to get permanent residence at the same time.
Everybody, of course.
Right?
That's-
Together at the same time.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation, because if you have a family, you want to move here as a
Mhm.
family. I totally understand that, and that's what we try to achieve too. But in some circumstances, I had a client that basically they were really close, and if he changed it, she does actually, her points go to 4, so they opted to choose that option where she comes first and then she'll sponsor him later on.
Yeah, the next question is going to be a bit of a tricky question, and then I think that will only be based on our experience. That is, I have a high performance autism son, 12 years old. He's totally independent. Is this going to be a problem for immigration?
That's a very difficult question, because not necessarily. Okay, it really depends on. They changed the rules on medical inadmissibility recently, so now the threshold
It's 18,000.
Yeah, so if the Canadian government looks at if it's going to cost him more than 18,000, obviously he's no serious risk to the Canadian society as far as it comes from communicable diseases. So it might be a matter of cost, and if the cost of medication and such on care is lower than 18,000, it could be.
Yeah, and actually there's not really a straight answer to that question until you go through the medical portion of it.
Correct.
So you have to actually apply for the express entry, get your invitation, which means that you have enough points, apply for your permanent residency, get your medical done, and then that's when the results will come in, and then a decision will be made. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so what is the language score required for PNP or express entry?
Well, express entry, the higher the better. I think right now, like I said, for candidates overseas, you would probably want a CLB 9. So CELP 4 9s, IELTS 3 7s, and then listening an 8.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for if you wanted to get the max points.
Mm-hmm.
For PNPs, each province is a little bit different. Like for BC. For some, BC is actually based on a point system as well. So the higher your language, the more points you get. But the minimum requirement for a provincial nominee is actually 4, CLB 4. Some places have CLB 5 actually, as low as CLB 5. But remember, a lot of these places, they also have sometimes that you have to achieve sufficient points. So even if you get the minimum scores, it might not be sufficient to get points actually to get selected.
Exactly. So whoever is interested into applying through the express entry and you have questions, we're here to help you. So our email is contact at immi-canada.com. So you can email us. Our staff will help you with the appointment, and then of course you'll have to answer some questions. So we know exactly, sort of your basic information. During our consultation, we'll go more, right?
Exactly. And I guess again, it's much easier because we can answer only generic questions on these. Everybody has their own unique situation.
It is.
And then you have to tailor the consultations towards each individual. Again, there's a lot of things that we'll ask through the consultations where it can help us determine maybe a different pathway.
Exactly. So it is important that you actually read a lot. There's many informations, on the proper immigration website. It is important for you to know exactly what your objectives are and how to get to, the final destination that is your permanent residency.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that we're done here.
Okay.
So thank you very much for helping on this
problem.
live.
My pleasure.
And if you have any questions, please email us and we're happy to help. See you later.
Have a good day.